pressing for action represent a stunning example of reaching way, way, way across the aisle. Tea Party favorite Mike Lee and Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin and Texas Republican John Cornyn and Vermont Democrat Patrick Leahy are all working together on this. It would be legislation years in the making. Liberals and libertarians have long advocated a change treat nonviolent drug users, but in her latest article for the National Review, reporter and friend of the show Betsy Woodruff writes that for the past decade, conservatives have been quietly crafting a reform strategy, and they are now going public, using this state that I'm in right now, Texas, as an example of how criminal justice reform can cut costs and lower the number of repeat offenders. Betsy joins us now. Betsy, criminologists have long told us that prison is criminogenic, that it in and of itself causes crime, and the real way forward is to incarcerate fewer people. I never thought that that message might resonate in the place where I am, the tough law and order state of Texas. Why here and why now is it working?
To be honest, it really comes down to dollars. In 2007, the Department of Corrections told the state legislature that they were going to need to add 17,000 new beds for prisoners. And if there's one thing that gets the Texas legislature to move, and to move fast, it's a fiscal hawkishness. So the legislature put together a policy in tandem with the Texas Public Policy Foundation that worked both to change sentencing laws and also to provide incarceration alternatives. And the fallout was really phenomenal. Instead of adding 17,000 new beds, they've been able to close prisons and to cancel plans to build new prisons. And most importantly, this year, Texas crime rates have significantly dropped. They're at 1964 levels. So it's hard to argue it's been anything but a really astonishing success.
Well, and Betsy, you also talk about the fact that the fiscal case is certainly compelling, and that's gotten a lot of fiscal conservatives on board. But you've also seen social conservatives getting on board with prison reform.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue that you're pro-family if you support legislation that tears apart families and damages communities. And Tony Perkins' organization, the Family Research Council, has been supportive. Heritage Action has been supportive because it's, from a compassionate conservative perspective, it's hard to make a case that you should keep these laws in place when they're so hard, especially on members of our society that are most disadvantaged.
Yeah, I recently interviewed Tim Lynch from Cato, and he said, look, these are far too harsh. This is something where libertarians can agree with progressives. How do you go and take that sentiment there from a Cato, a libertarian leader, and look at what's happening in the Congress and go beyond a couple of progressives and libertarians and get more of a real political alliance?
Well, the alliance is really fascinating. It's not just bipartisan, as you mentioned earlier. It's very trans-ideological. Mike Lee and Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois apparently have been talking for a few months about it, working together, putting together legislation. Cornyn has legislation that mirrors Texas's reforms, and then Rand Paul and Senator Leahy from Vermont, who, it's hard to find two senators that have less in common, are also working on prison reform. And what I'm hearing is that we should expect one prison reform bill to come out of the Judiciary Committee.
Well, and most recently, presidents are actually